Welcome to the Path Forward podcast. The podcast is sponsored by the Second Opportunity Program. My name is Augie Gillarducci, and I'm your host. And thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you've been following our series, and if you haven't, you can go back and watch the previous episodes. My guest today is DeAndre Brown, and this is one of the ones that I like to do because DeAndre and I met through LinkedIn. And so we really can't say that we're friends, can't say that we know each other. So I'm going to be learning his story and what he's doing now and how he's helping people that have been incarcerated at the same time that you are. So DeAndre, first, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity, Augie. I can't wait.
Good deal. I'd like to start by asking you, kind of take us through your childhood. Where'd you grow up? You know, what city and what were you active doing? Were you into sports or school or just kind of getting through?
So I'm originally from Memphis. I was born here, lived in rural Arkansas in the segregated South, where I attended most of my school age years. But I would come back to Memphis, where my mother lived, on the weekends and throughout the summer. I didn't know at the time why that was happening. I was raised by my great aunt, who was my grandmother's older sister. Found out it's because my mother was on crack, and she didn't want me to have to see her in that condition, and she didn't want me to get an education in the Memphis city school system. She thought that the rural setting was a better situation, predominantly white institution, maybe a mix of about 75, 25, 70, 30, somewhere around there. And I was in the minority. But since the fourth grade, I was the only black kid in my class. So I was expected to be the athlete. But I was also the smartest kid in my class, which had its own set of challenges. So growing up, you really didn't see racism much that was out in your face. Some smaller things I did find out when I got in my older years in high school, but pretty bland childhood, a lot of fun. I loved life. I was carefree, the life of the party, all that good stuff. And like I said, a good student, so top of my class. Made it to junior high school. We consolidated more junior highs, and at the time, I was nominated to be class president. So I became class president in the eighth grade, remained class president until graduation, was student government president. If there was an organization, I was the president of it. My goal was to graduate high school and become a neonatal neurosurgeon. When I graduated high school, my mother by this time had gotten off of drugs. She had moved from the projects in Memphis and received a Section 8 voucher to go in which was formerly a predominantly white neighborhood. But since the Section 8 vouchers are targeted towards predominantly white neighborhoods, more vouchers had come. So the white people that left, it had changed. And this was in the era of crack. So I attended school at Rose College here in Memphis on a full scholarship. And during school, I felt uncomfortable because while I came from a high school that was predominantly white, the Rose dynamic was even greater. Out of 500 students in our freshman class, only 13 of us were black. They had a special table for us to sit at and all that good stuff. And I didn't feel comfortable, so I would go home every day, but I didn't have gas money. So while I'm on my way to be a neonatal neurosurgeon, I don't have gas money, and I need to find a way to support my going back and forth. So I decided to try to sell some crack because next door to my mom's house was a crack house. She lives in a cul-de-sac, and people that use crack would come around all night. The bucket sat there, and it would be empty. And I'm like, wait a minute, if that bucket's empty, surely I can grab me some drugs and I can sell. I can become a drug dealer. I didn't want people to know because I was going to be a doctor. I was going to college. So I had the guy that was next door who happened to be a drug user himself, who was 39. I was 19. 38, I'm sorry. He was twice married. He was my mentor. So I realized early on that I was not built for the drug game. I was a nerd. I was green. I didn't understand the street. Didn't understand that there was this subculture that was operating right before my eyes. So he taught me the culture, taught me how to rock crack up, how to bring it back, break it down, how to weigh it up, and taught me the language. He taught me the subculture. And when I learned the culture, I said, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty smart. I'm smarter than most of these guys. Yeah, let me become a career criminal. And that was my thought process. So at 19, I decided to stop going to school and find ways to navigate on the other side of the law. And it was intentional. I didn't make a mistake. I didn't make a bad decision. I made a conscious decision. I said, if I want to go to become a neonatal neurosurgeon, it's going to take 4 years of undergrad. It's going to take 4 years of medical school, 2 years of internship, 2 years of residency. But I can sell crack now. And if you remember in the 1990s, there had $1 million tracks where you had 16-year-old boys driving Mercedes Benz and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to try to sell some drugs, realized I didn't do it well. I got arrested by accident. I said, I won't do this anymore. But I didn't stop being a criminal. I decided then to become a white collar criminal. If you ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, and Leonardo DiCaprio, I was
Yep.
him.
Yep.
Only thing was I was terrified of flying, so I wouldn't fly. I fly everywhere now, but I was terrified of flying. Anything that could be made, I remember the AOL dial-up, waiting to get the computer smoking, and I would go at it. I mean, I would be in the lab all night long, just working and trying to figure things out. I would go to Kinko's to make my copies. They were 24 hours. I'd wait till everybody was gone at about 11:30. Get in there with the copy machines and the cutters and the laminating machines, work my magic. And I did that from 19 until 28. At 28, I was locked up the final time because I've been arrested maybe 9 or 10 times prior to that. I always get out on bond or to squeeze my way out. In 1998, they arrested me for theft over 100,000 because I had a job, but I was doing some illegal stuff at the job. And when they arrested me this time, they gave me 6 years of probation. I go, wow, I'm convicted now. Now what am I supposed to do? Can't get a job, can't do all this stuff. You would think that would have woken me up. Nah, it just made me go deeper and go harder. I figured I'm smart. I can figure this stuff out. Ended up violating my probation with the new charge, with several new charges. And then when they got me at 28, by this time I got convicted before it. I'm sorry, convicted at I think at 26, but I kept doing the stupid stuff. 28, I'm convicted this time, and I don't get to go home because by now I've accepted my 6 years probation. I've created new state charges, and now I have a federal indictment as well, which I didn't know about. I had talked to the FBI, but didn't know that they had me under investigation as well and had indicted me. So when the bounty hunters picked me up, I thought I was going for a state charge. It was actually the feds. So I started at 201 at the county jail, went across the street the next day and got my 25 count federal indictment. So this time now I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen. Never been a part of the federal system, had heard stories and all that good stuff. All I know is they don't lose if you go to trial. So I'm like, well, how do I do this? My attorney finally came and convinced me it was serious. It wasn't as bad as my state charges. So started when I'm locked up and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. While I'm incarcerated, I'm seeing a lot of younger guys coming in, 18, 19 years old. They have no idea what they've done. They know what they've done. They don't know what they're facing. They've signed for time. What's this? Big bro, what's this? You just signed for 30 years. 30 years? Yeah. They told me I could go home. They lied. So how do I stop people from coming to prison? At that time, it hit me, and I became a preacher when I was locked up. Hit me then that I need to do something different. So about 6 months in, I started navigating life differently. Started taking advantage of being incarcerated and started building me a new me. I looked introspectively at who I was and realized that what I was doing was not indicative of who I knew I was supposed to be. So while I was inside, I started changing my moral makeup and became a better person. So I was the guy, they have two people that said in prison, inmates or convicts. I became a model inmate. Everywhere I went and each stop I made between the state and the Fed, I was always a trustee. I was always counted on to do things. So much so that they put me on a cart in the state facility. It's so funny. They only have one rock man, is what we call them. One rock man on the yard. And the rock man, of course, if you in, that's the person that brings stuff from one unit to the next and all that. I'm not putting anything on my cart. If you want to do something about it, I've been doing some push-ups. If you want to get them up, we can get them up because I'm not putting on my cart. And they got a little rowdy. So end up the officers, let you know how prisons work. Officers gave me a buddy. So we were two rock men on my shift. So he could do the work that I wasn't going to do. I wouldn't compromise because I knew if I compromised inside, I wouldn't have the foundation and not compromise when I got out. So as I told you earlier, I've been out now 20 years. And I told the Lord, if he got me out early, which he did, he gave me a time cut and all that good stuff. I didn't have to tell anybody. Everything went through the system. When I got out, I said, if you get me out of here, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure folks don't come back. And two things I realized. The people I was going to target didn't go to church. They didn't go to school. So in order to do that, I have to create something that they can come to that's separate from church or school. And that's where the idea to create my nonprofit Lifeline of Success came from. I actually wrote the plan when I was incarcerated on my bunk. Wrote it out, what I wanted to do. When I came home, about 3 or 4 years after being free, I started putting the plan in the paper. And then I opened the doors on faith. 15 years later, it's still running. And I've been in my current role for about 4 because the mayor of Shelby County, who became a friend of mine because people started attaching themselves to my work because ex-offender reentry had become a hot button issue now. He had bipartisan support. Who's doing good work? I was doing good work. They partnered with me. So about 4 years ago, the mayor called me and asked me if I would leave my nonprofit and become a part of his team. So I'm appointed by the mayor and I serve at the administration's behest. as the director of the Shelby County Office of Reentry. Ironically, my office falls under the Shelby County Division of Correction, where I was once an inmate. So the place where I was once an inmate, I now have the keys to, and I'm a director and have a county vehicle, all that good stuff. You cannot tell me. It makes no sense. But, I'm rolling with it, baby. It's possible.
I'd like to go back on a few things.
Yes.
So when you indicated that you started to work on your moral makeup, was there an event that triggered that, or was it just your thought process?
There was an event. And being in the county jail, I had been reading my Bible and started. People noticed. So when I first got incarcerated, my first 3 months, I was the shower man in county jail. Meaning, when you come into the unit, you can't just get on your bunk. If you took a shower downstairs, you have to get in the shower before you get on your bunk. And the guy came that was going to sit next to me and didn't want to get in the shower. But I was the guy that I took on the task of being the guy that put everybody in the shower. And he decided he wasn't going to get in that night. Okay. She puts the stuff on his bunk, and I said, "Hey, in the shower." I took a shower downstairs. I said, "It's fine, but don't get on that bunk." He kept on it, act like he didn't hear me. So everybody's in the unit now, so open the door, and everybody's watching me. Like, I got to do something. Put my tennis shoes on. Okay. He still keeps on moving stuff around. So I walk into the shower and turn the shower on for him and sit back on my bunk. And I look up at him. He's still doing this. I said, "Well, get your bad ass on up there then." He said, "Hey, man, you ain't got to talk to me when you got in the shower." They moved me the next day. So they moved me to another unit, and no one knew me. All they did was see me reading my Bible. So the older guy said, "Got some younger brothers and they trying to get converted. Let's start a Bible study." Okay, cool. Started doing a little prayer at the end of the night. And after that, I realized the power I had to influence other people. People started coming to me when they had issues. I became like the in-house counselor. So people had problems, they knew they could come and talk to me because I would keep their business sacred and I would give them sound advice, if any, but I would listen. That's how I spend most of my time. So after doing that, I'm like, man, this is kind of cool. I think I can do this. It was easy for me. So after seeing how the impact I had on other people's lives, I wanted to then become a model behavior person so they could see me and know how to operate inside this system.
I have a kind of a follow up on that. So when you said that you wrote out your plan,
Mm-hmm.
and was it based on seeing new people coming in and observing, what their situation was, or inherently knowing what the gaps were in the system, that you wanted to create an organization that could help fill those gaps and support people as they got out of incarceration?
Indeed, it was based on knowing what I was going to need, and then listening to the people that were bringing me their problems and saying, "These are my issues. How do I solve them?" And me rationalizing in my head what I would think could probably fix it, and then realizing, I was using data without writing down numbers. 6 people come and tell you they need a job when they get out. You need to have fun way to get people a job. 7 people come and tell you they need ID when they leave. They don't have any social documentation. Maybe they need some social documentation. They don't know how to control themselves. They don't know how to resolve conflict just watching in the unit. How do I fix this so I become a moral compass even in the unit so people don't lose it? I had the unit. My unit was always a happy space. Even though we were incarcerated, I intentionally made myself the guy that would be the one that would suffer for the guy so we could have a good time in prison, because knowing we were going home, we didn't need to suffer even though we were in a place that was hopeless. My unit wasn't going to be hopeless. And it worked. And after I realized the power, again, that I had to influence others' behavior, I said, well, let me just start to jot this down so when I leave here, I can have a safe space for us. Because at the time, I didn't know there was that thing called ex-offender reentry. When I came home, it was kind of new. It wasn't the thing people were doing. So when I would go in community meetings and talk about what I wanted to do, they looked at me strange. When I initially would make conversation and give them ideas, I was smart, I was intelligent, I was thoughtful. But the minute they found out I was a convicted felon, then I went from that to being cunning, slicky, and crafty, trying to get over on the system. The information didn't shift. The only thing that shifted was who was saying it. They didn't know I had a conviction. So I had to navigate that whole. And then think about it. We're in the South, so we're rigid here. I had to figure out how to navigate fighting all of the negative thought processes that people had and the negative perception they had about my population of people. So the mission of my organization was to change the perception of individuals that have been convicted. That was the whole mission. Change how you see us. I don't care what you call me. Change how you treat me.
I had a similar situation from the standpoint but I was observing people coming back. So,
Mm.
over 13 years, I was locked up with thousands of guys, and there's always some leave, and you look at them and you say, this guy's going to be fine. He seems to have his head together, and 3 months later, they're walking back in the door. Obviously,
Yeah.
something went sideways, right? But what I observed in the Fed system, so we'd release guys all around the country,
Hmm.
and young, old, black, white, tall, short, but the stories seemed to be very similar when they would come back.
Yeah.
And so I built out what is now known as a second opportunity program based upon just kind of interviewing the guys. I mean, in
Right.
a conversational way, but what happened? Well, I was supposed to have a job, but that fell through, so I couldn't get any work. So I went and started doing this, and what I found frustrating is when I got out, when I released to the halfway house, that was in 2017. There were all these resources available that on the inside I was unaware of. And if we can't get the information in the hands of the population, um, what good are they? And so that's really how our organization has grown, is by saying what resources are necessary, and let's make sure that through our educational program, through our podcast, that we make people aware of this is what's out there, to find employment, to find transitional housing, to find educational pathways. It's there. It's just knowing how to access and apply for it. So I'd like to talk about when you opened your nonprofit, and you said you ran it for 15 years, or it's been running for 15 years, and at some point it's still running, correct?
Right. Hmm.
But you stepped out to take a position that was of, I mean, great honor to the work that you were doing. So the mayor says, "Hey, I'd like you to run this for me," and it's a great story. It's a victory for all of us who have been incarcerated, right? It's all of us that celebrate something like that. That in a high-profile position to help others that have been incarcerated is a man who's walked that path himself. So that's great, and congratulations. But
Thank you.
as you started to put together, you had your written plan, but as you started to turn it into reality after you got out, could you share maybe some of the challenges that you had as far as being able to, on one side, locate the resources, but then on the other side, work with the population, some of which, we can be a little bit hard headed sometimes about not wanting to embrace new ideas or do things differently. And so, how did you navigate all that?
That's a great question. And one of the things I tell people when they write a plan, know this: when you come home, it's not going to work. It's not going to work the way you thought it would, because there's so many things that you don't have knowledge of. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you need to figure out how to navigate around this issue. And what we didn't really have when I came home were people that could help me navigate it. Because people that had been convicted didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't a big. It was like taboo to talk about being incarcerated. I came out and like, hey, I've been locked up. I'm the convicted felon in the room, and made it a thing where I'm not afraid of it. I'm not ashamed of it. And people started to come to me and tell me more about, yeah, I've been locked up too, but they didn't want to tell everybody else. But what I had to figure out though is how to navigate when I have a roadblock and not quit. One of the things I realized being in the street is I would not take no for an answer. So now that I'm free and doing things the right way, I'm not going to take no for an answer. And at the time, there were not many resources that were solely dedicated to our population. So I had to be the person that introduced our population to different organizations and different programs, to let them see the need, and then navigate how to connect them to us in a way that they're not afraid of us. Because generally, at that time, people were still afraid of people that they didn't see on TV. And realizing that these resources existed, but they weren't publicized enough. And not only not publicized, we had rules and regulations that kept us excluded from those pots of money or resources. So one of the reasons I took this role is because it gave me access at the county level to be an official that has the authority to come in and create policy that helps the population. I never wanted to do anything that would help me. If it was something I could do for me, it wasn't worth it. It had to be something that I could do that would open up pathways for my people. So I take that everything I do is for us. And when you come home, you have to realize that what got you in prison was your best thought process. That means there's some new information you need so you don't go back. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, help, or reach out to people that are willing to help. I've had to humble myself so many times, sit in spaces, and this is one of the hardest parts, Augie, to sit under people that you know don't have the same mental acumen that you do, but you need that resource. And to not come in saying, yeah, I know that, and just sit through it and let them finish talking. Because what happens is once you give them space to speak to you, and they tell you anything you do after, they think they get credit for it. And that's perfectly fine. You can get all the credit. I just need all the cash so I can take care of my people. and humbling myself put me in a position where people weren't threatened by my place in spaces until I got enough information to then challenge what they thought. That's when the whole when I became an expert that knew how they operated, because that's how my mind works. Then I became someone they would want to call to all the meetings now, because now I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just challenging the thought process and trying to help them get better at assisting us because they don't know us. But they assumed that there was a challenge because they didn't know us. But when I navigated after many years, I made it to the point where I can come in unthreatening now. They see the work and they want to be a part of it and attach themselves to it. But we must be willing to say we need assistance. We must be willing to say help and accept it.
You know, I'm in jails and prisons every week, and I say that all the time. I mean, almost word for word, we're saying the same thing. What I tell them is that number one rule of reentry: we need to humble ourselves and ask for help, because
Yes.
people aren't going to assume we need help. If we're sitting talking with somebody about finding a job and we don't have access to transportation, we need to tell them that. It's
Yes.
no good to find me a job 20 miles from here because there's no way I can get there. So we need to be willing to say, hey, I don't have my driver's license right now, or I don't have a car right now. We need to be willing to say that, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get the services that we really need.
Indeed.
Terrific stuff. I mean, what you're saying, I think, is so absolutely spot on. So I want to turn left a little bit here and say, all right, so you're in Shelby County, and for everybody who's watching, Shelby County is Memphis, Tennessee, and they have a really large county jail in Shelby County. That I do know, and it's had some issues as far as violence, like most of the large county jails do. But this little episode here is around the country. It's all 50 states that it's being seen. So can you bring the message forward about how, look, you don't have to be in Shelby County to get access to these services? What should we be looking for when we get out, or what should we ask our support network or our families to be looking for before we release, to find a reentry type center that will be able to provide the resources we need? What advice would you give on that?
Great question. Google is our friend in this area. What I would suggest, the first thing to do is just do a simple Google search of ex-offender or second chance programs in my area. There are so many in the nation. So I've traveled the nation doing this work for years, and I find that most of the people that are doing the work are doing great work, but the people that need the service don't know what they are, but they can be found on Google. It's the craziest thing ever. There's some national resources like the Council of State Government. They have a website. The National Workforce Reentry Center has a website. LAC Legal Action Center in New York has a national hire network. I joined that network when I first started Lifeline of Success, and that's how I became like a national guy, because we had done Ban the Box in Shelby County in Memphis. We were the first city in the South to put Ban the Box on the ballot, and I was the guy that kind of led the effort 13 years ago. Didn't know that it had happened in the South anywhere. So since we were the first ones in the South, the people that were doing the work in the South that had been doing it nationally for a while reached out to me. So I got to meet a lot of them through the National Hire Network. And when you begin to do those Google searches, specifically ask for what you need assistance with. But after doing that, the people that you go to, they know people that are doing the work as well. Most of us work together because I've learned I can't do everything for everybody. I can do what I do and I do it well. But the things I can't do, I have to have partners, because the goal is to make sure people are successful. So when you go out, find people that have a heart for us. I would say let the government be a starting point, but not the end. Because being a government official, I understand government closes at 4:30 in Shelby County. After 4:30, we can't help you. You need to find people that love this work, eat, sleep, and breathe this work, that'll come to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because as you know, Augie, most of our issues don't happen between normal working hours. Our
Right.
issues happen when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, no one there to call. But there are people that do this work, that love this work, like ourselves, that have been through the system, that will answer the phone at 2 o'clock. Find those people.
Great information. And so in Shelby, when you came in, did you bring some, obviously a different thought process, but some specific objectives that you wanted to, that you committed to the mayor? Hey, I want to, for example, I want to reduce recidivism by 8%, and I want to create more affordable housing. Did you have those, or did you come in and take a look at the lay of the land and start to figure out where you needed to make impact?
I came in and looked at the lay of the land, figured out what was working well, what needed to be tweaked a little bit. But the main thing I did is I made our mission human focused. It wasn't about how many people you can see. It's how many people can you affect change. And you can't affect change unless you see them as human. Changing the government's perspective of everybody needs a job to no, this human needs to learn how to live. And the holistic approach of reentry as opposed to the big three: housing, transportation, and employment. Yeah, we need mental health. We need health care. We need
Yeah.
shoes. We need underwear. We need toothpaste. We need to feel like someone cares about us and I'm a human again, not just a number, because I've been a number for so many years. Now I'm Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown has emotions, and I'm going to deal with him on a personal level. When a person comes into our space now, the case manager is supposed to get to know this person, not what they say on paper. The application is only a guide. I need you, when I'm going to ask you questions about the individual, how many children do they have? What are their hobbies? What they like to do in their free time? How do they spend their free time? Because if you don't deal with those issues, those are the gaps and the gray areas that often lead us to reoffend because no one deals with them because they don't think we need to touch them. And one of the things that I'm very proud of since being in the space, we've created a Shelby County reentry system. It works in concert with the Shelby County criminal justice system. And the reentry system is about 70 organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, faith-based, and governmental agencies that meet every other month to deal with all the collateral consequences of conviction. And we have different committees. The committees work on 1 month with the issues. The next month we come back as a large group and report out. One of the successes is we've been doing this for almost 2 years. I received my first federal grant for $1 million that I signed from the same people that convicted me for housing vouchers. It's almost through county commission. Well, we will receive $1 million to give people housing vouchers. This is the first. We're going to move this year the target is transportation. Being a government official, we have leverage, and I'm trying to pull all the levels of government to work on behalf of us as opposed to working against us as it's been historically done.
It's interesting. The idea of getting a job, and on the inside, I obsessed with that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
obsessed. Who's going to hire me? How am I going to get a job? Take care of my responsibilities. I've got nothing. I mean, I've got to rebuild from scratch. And
yep,
but what you said is so powerful and so true. So there's people that, and probably well intentioned, say, we got to make sure when they get out they can get a job.
yeah,
They may not be ready for a job. They may
yeah,
have some unresolved substance abuse issues that need to be dealt with. They may have some trauma and mental health issues that need to be dealt with, right? They may have some family reunification things that have to happen before they can clear their mind to move forward.
yeah.
And so I think that what you're talking about is so important as a message to all of society, is to say that it's more than just a paycheck. There's other things that we have need for, and some of it's just support, right? Some of it is, that's why peer support is so powerful. Sometimes I think we just need to talk to somebody that understands what we're living and going through, and can kind of provide some reassurance to say that this is what we see all the time. There's nothing special about this feeling. It's something that it's expected.
Exactly. I tell people to try to get individuals that don't understand when you are incarcerated, prison kills parts of you because you have to create a new human to survive in that space. And you don't rebuild it. You don't come home the same way you went in. Some leave better, some leave worse, but nobody leaves the same. I don't like crowded spaces. I don't like loud noises. I can't sleep in places without the television being on. I don't sit with my back to the door. Things that didn't bother me before going in are things that I live with constantly now. But if my family doesn't understand that, I don't like going to the barbecue on the 4th of July with my family because I've got some cousins that I don't know now because I'm different and they're not. And I don't know what they're, I don't, use a incarceration term. I don't know what they own. So since I don't know what they own, I don't want to be around it because I don't trust them. Yeah, we grew up together, but I've been away. I don't even trust them because I don't know them, and no one's taking the time to get to know me. They expect me to be the same person that was incarcerated because I look the same. My language sounds the same. I'm not the same. My mental thing. Oh my God, I'm different. I'm watching doors, windows. I'm watching anything move. I mean, there's so many things I'm doing now. I'm always hyper vigilant and I can't relax. I'm 20 years out and it's still hard to sleep sometimes. I was doing a presentation last week, 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to the guys, and I use sometimes things that are about incarceration to let them know, because once you let them know that you understand, a lot of the stuff goes out the window. They'll listen to you right off. So I'm doing an exercise about how you pop your shirt after you wash it on your hands. And I popped the shirt 3 times, and the third time I popped it, I felt like I was in the unit. I had to stop talking. I had to go in my office and cry. 20 years out, just that motion, because I hadn't done it, and I felt it in my shoulders, like, oh my God. And I said, there's a way you have to use your wrist, and there's so much to that a person that hasn't been incarcerated won't understand. So we can talk about stuff, and we can talk for hours, and people that are sitting with us will never get what we're talking about. But we will be in perfect union, and we've just met because there's some things about it that we can bond. It's probably trauma bonded, but hell, it works.
Yeah, I jokingly refer to it as the secret handshake.
Yeah.
Because that the experience is so deep seated that there are parts of it that we share, that certain parts that we carry with us that I know you'll understand, and I'll understand when you
Indeed.
talk about it or express something about it. You're terrific. What you're doing is terrific, and I'm in Tennessee a lot. I'm down by Atlanta, but we're doing a lot of work in Tennessee right now. So I'm gonna reach out to you, and hopefully we'll be able to go have lunch or some such thing. And
Yes,
I'd
sir.
love to see some of the work you're doing, some of the work that's going on at your nonprofit, which is still functioning. Because I'm all in on this reentry stuff. I mean,
Yes, sir.
it's consuming. I'm all in on it. So
Indeed. Indeed.
before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you to just take a couple of minutes and look in the camera. So remember, this is on, as crazy as it sounds, more than 1 million tablets around the country. And I'd like you to just talk to the men and women on the inside, because as you know, there's some pretty dark days on the inside. And somebody right now is looking at this going through one of those dark days. And maybe just a few words of encouragement about how things can get better when they finish incarceration.
Brothers and sisters, understand that while you may be away from all those that you love, you may be in a place that you wish you weren't. It's where you are. One of the hardest parts is accepting the reality that you are where you are. But once you can kind of accept the fact that this is where I have to live now, you begin to then make decisions to ensure that you create the human being that you truly want to be. Because for those of you that are going home, you need to make those decisions now. You need to start modeling that behavior now, because you have the benefit of being removed from a lot of the cares of this world that consume individuals in such a way they don't move forward. They only go backwards. So my challenge to you is to take some time, really get to know who you are, really get to set some values and standards for yourself that you will never compromise no matter what the situation. Because if you can start to do that in that environment, when you come home, life is easy. I tell people all the time, nothing on this side of freedom bothers me. What am I afraid of? I'm not afraid of being incarcerated, because if I go back, I can handle it. I'm not going to do anything to go back, but since I've been incarcerated, I'm no longer afraid of it. I know what it looks like. And I'm not afraid of dying, because I love the Lord. So if you kill me, I'm going to see Jesus. So if any other thing other than that, it's nothing. I don't get frustrated. I don't lose my cool in situations, because I know I can handle anything. You are doing something that most men and women would never be able to do. I need you to understand that. But in these dark days, in them rough moments, remember this: no matter where you are, you can always have hope. Prison is just a building. You don't have to be in prison, even though you're in prison. I found books to read. I read so many books. Anytime you saw me, there was a book in my back pocket. I read books cover to cover, sometimes more than once, because I didn't want to be in the place. I wanted to. I wanted to be free. And freedom is not about where you live; it's how you think. You can become free now and live a free life, even though you're incarcerated. And then when you come home, my challenge to you is always remember how you lived and where you were. Don't forget it. If you forget it, you'll go back. Remember how I felt to not be able to go to the graduation. Remember how I felt to miss Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. Remember how I felt to not get the mail that you thought was coming. Remember how I felt to not have money on commissary. Remember how I felt to go to chow call and they ran out of hot food and gave you cold food. Remember how I felt when you didn't have soap to take a shower. Remember how I felt when you was afraid to go to sleep because they were acting a damn fool in the unit. Remember those feelings. Because if you don't remember them, you're destined to see it again. But if you do remember them, you can use that as fuel to help not only yourself, but to help other brothers and sisters coming home. We owe it to each other to make sure we're all okay. I love you. If nobody ever tells you, you may never meet me. Know this, I'm fighting my ass off to make sure that the nation sees you as human and gives you all the things that you deserve as a citizen of this great country. Don't you sleep tonight without knowing somebody has your best interest at heart. And when you do come home, somebody's going to love on you. God bless y'all, man. Keep your heads up.
So thanks for visiting with us today. This has been a terrific episode. I'm sure it's going to be very popular. I will. I'm going to reach out to you and see if we can't find a time to meet in person. And I'd love
Please.
to see some of the work that you're doing and see if there's some ways that we can help to fortify some of it. So
I look
great
forward to it.
stuff. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for your time. And this is the Path Forward podcast. My guest today was DeAndre Brown. I'm Augie Gillarducci, the host. Thank you for joining us. And please tune in again in 2 weeks. We'll have a new episode up. Thank you so much.